Hello and welcome to Season 2 of the Soccer Coaching Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Scott.
And I'm your other host, Mark.
In each episode, Mark and I will discuss the key topics that impact on football coaching in the foundation and youth development phases. We will share our thoughts, ideas and experiences, and whenever possible include guests so we can get their insights and opinions too. Thanks for listening and we hope you enjoy this episode. Mr. Edwards, how are you doing?
Yep, not too bad, Scott. Yourself?
I've gone all formal on you this morning.
Yeah, it was very formal start. Yeah, professional
Edwards.
was the word.
I feel like you're in court. How are you? Okay?
Yeah, not too bad. Yeah, yourself?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. I'm good. So this is a little brief intro to interview we did with Tristan Thomas.
Yes.
So we'll speak about it in a second, but more importantly, how was your evening last night?
It was an unpleasant evening, to be honest with you. QPR lost 4-0 home to Forest.
I was out. I was doing the session with the players and got back a bit later. Yeah. And I was sitting there watching. I thought, and it was on TV, wasn't it?
That's right. Yeah.
So I enjoyed it. And it was only like 1-0 or something.
That's right.
10 minutes to go, and then
yes,
I switched over and watched a bit of the Champions League. Switched back, and then you had lost 4-0.
Yeah, I think that firstly, it's good for you to watch a bit of Championship football rather than Champions League football. I must say. Messi versus Grant Hall.
It won't happen again.
Yeah. It was a reasonable game actually. Forest were the better team in the first half, and we started to come back into it second half, and then we had a player sent off, so we were chasing the game, and we had a couple of chances, and then I think by the end, the last kind of 5 minutes or so, we were a bit dead in our feet, and the game was kind of
break a few times.
Yeah, and they just hit us. But overall, we've done well this season, but it feels like the wheels are truly coming off now, and we're falling back down to our rightful place in the bottom half of the table.
It's the wrong time to stop performing in that over the Christmas period because so many games come thick and fast, don't they?
Yeah, definitely. And we got suspension and injuries as well. And obviously, when you've got a small squad, that takes its toll. Was
it a red card? Was it a straight red or 2 yellows?
Straight red. Yeah, he was the last man. Debatable. There was a number of defensive errors that led to the red card.
As is often the case.
I was watching it last night, analysing the defensive errors. But hey. Anyway.
Well, talking about analysing, obviously, so with Tristan, who you reached out to, to get him on, I think. So Tristan's background, he'll talk about it in the episode himself. But obviously, his background is about analysis, wasn't it? Originally, probably moved into coaching. So, and the idea was to get him on to try and get a perspective from the position of kind of what the end game looks like, and then how we might be able to unpick some of that stuff down to work with the younger players in the foundation phase to best prepare them for what the football might look like in the future. Yeah, that was the idea, wasn't it? Really? Yeah. Good episode. Good interview.
I thought it was a very good interview. Yeah. And I guess we'll let our listeners decide.
Let
them decide. But I thought it was very good. Really, really good.
All right, cool. So we'll take a listen and then we'll have a chat about it afterwards. Sound good?
Yep.
Cool. Tristan, hello and welcome. How are you doing?
Cheers. Very well, thanks. Thanks so much for having me on.
No, I appreciate you coming over. We've seen how busy you are and the amount of things you're doing, so we're very grateful for you to squeeze in some time and actually come and see us. So thank you so much. Have you listened to the episodes before? Do you know what you're in for?
Sort of. I've listened to a few episodes and I agree with most of the things you're saying.
Oh, right. We'll take most.
So like I said, thanks for having me on.
No, not at all. Well, Tristan, we had a little chat about kind of the reason we reached out to you. Given the roles that you do, we thought it'd be really valuable to have someone with your experience and what you do currently, looking kind of how the game looks as an end product in many ways, and try and unpick some of that stuff to help us out as coaches that work with younger age groups to kind of make sure we're trying to do some of the things that would benefit them in the best way possible for when they, as they develop through to their older years. So that's kind of the premise for the conversation today, but we'll see where it goes and go from there, if that's all right.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to have a great chat. I need to do this more often, to be honest.
Yeah.
I mean, people want to have a great chat about
always good to talk about football, isn't it? Yeah. Well, look, so first of all, just out of interest, what were you like as a player when you were a kid? Just interested to know, how would you describe yourself?
The answer to this question is going to be really quick, so we can just skip over this straight away. I was an okay player. Maybe it's best to ask the players that I coach currently what I'm like doing demos and stuff like that. And I'm not sure. I'm not like the Ashley Cole sort of coach who's now gone in at Chelsea, where the players would just stand back and watch and pick everything up. I'm sort of on the opposite side of the spectrum. I was a decent player, very functional. You'd probably say, but I think that's it wasn't down to my love of the game. Obviously, I give up 24 hours a day almost to coaching now. So I've got a massive, huge love of the game. But it was probably the environment I grew up in and the way I was coached myself. So it's brilliant now as a coach to sort of think back on what my experience was as a player, and sort of do the complete opposite.
Yeah.
How I was coached. Don't get me wrong. It was definitely a safe environment a lot of the time that I was brought up in terms of playing football as a youngster. But I just kind of do the complete opposite of how I was coached.
Yeah, times have changed.
It's funny actually, because even when I was younger, when I was coached, I need to be careful because my dad coached me, so I need to be a little bit careful. Not that he listens to the show, but it's funny because at the time you don't really think about it, right? I remember like some of the amount of running we used to do without the football, and I remember like just some of the standing still, like throwing
one
the
ball between 20.
Yeah, just remember it all. And even when you turned up for matches, there'd be like a couple of footballs. But that's the way it was a little bit back in those days for kids football.
Yeah, 100%. And well, I said safe most of the time, but one of my most vivid memories is even now I'm a bit of a wimp and I don't like any sort of confrontation on a football pitch or anything like that, even though I was a defensive player. So one session I was probably about 12 or 13. We were literally standing in the line, so straight away, that's your first big no-no, the line drill, and the coach was kicking the ball as high as he could in the air. Yeah. We had to head it one by one. And it was aimed at me this session, I know, because I'd missed a few headers in the game before as well. And I was almost at the point of tears as an 11 or 12-year-old, just having to head this football that is coming down with snow on it. And obviously now that would probably fall against everything that the FA is trying to put out. Especially because obviously, like I mentioned to you before, I was in the States for 2 years, and heading's now banned up to under 12. So that's really interesting to go out there and see how the game's changed because of that. But that's one of my most vivid memories of growing up as a player, and probably why I'm no good now. So that's my excuse.
I like it. So what about your coaching journey then? When and how did that start?
Probably more or less through analysis. So when I was about 15 or 16, I started reading some articles online that would take more of a tactical view of the game. So stuff like Michael Cox's stuff, I'm not sure if you've read it, and Jonathan Wilson's book, Inverting the Pyramid. I read that. I must have been about 16 when I read that. Really, really interesting stuff. So I thought I'd sort of have a go at it myself, and I started writing, and I wrote a few articles around the sort of the Euros in 2012 and then the World Cup in 2014. And just basically getting better through trial and error, because I'm sort of a perfectionist in a way, whereas I don't want to put something out that's going to be rubbish. So I thought if I was writing myself about things and putting things out to the public, I would want it to be as good as possible. So therefore I studied like different tactical systems and things like that, and I really looked at the game through that sort of lens. And then I started writing for a few websites. And then for the guys that were doing tactics and writing for those websites, some of them, are quite esteemed in the game now. They were like, you've got to get into coaching. There's no way you can really preach all this stuff and not be out on the pitch yourself 100%. Then I sort of did my level 1, level 2, and started coaching. Went out to the States for 2 years, which was a fantastic experience. Coaching pretty well full time out there, and then came back and sort of and tried to build on that. That's sort of how I got into coaching, and it's certainly a journey that I don't regret taking.
Yeah, it's a funny way of going about it then, isn't it? Because you did the analyst kind of first, and then got to become a bit more of a practitioner.
Yeah. I think it's, for me, it's a little bit the opposite. I know this is not about me, but I'm going to talk about me. For me, it's a bit the opposite actually. I've always played football, always watched football, then got into coaching football because of my sons. And then I know now when I go to QPR and watch it, I like almost analysing. Well, on the way there, I look at the lineup, who's playing, and then I think, I wonder what system he's going to play today. Like Warburton plays different systems, and I think, is he going to play 5 at the back, 3 at the back? Is he going to play 4 at the back? And I find myself analysing the game more now than I think I've ever done, and I think that's a result of coaching. So it was kind of the opposite for me.
Does change how you see it, doesn't it?
Yeah. I understand you like to stop and start every goal on Sky Sports, right?
Oh, do you know what? I've got this thing. I've been obsessed with that for years. Even in the old days, we used to have videos and stop and rewind things. Whenever there's a goal scored, I always look at like how the goal came about. There's always a reason, nearly always a reason why, and someone's done something wrong usually. Yeah. And the boys hate it because
you ruin it.
Yeah, and to be fair, the way Arsenal plan, I do it quite a lot at the moment. Now we're conceding goals, but it's quite interesting to kind of, you can always trace something back, can't you, positive or negative, and see whether it's a positional mistake or whether someone's just misread something or a technical issue or something. But it's an interesting way of going about it. I don't think I've met anyone else that's kind of gone to analysis first and then gone into coaching. So, do you think it was helpful having that? understanding of the game from an analytical point of view for your coaching?
Yeah, it is helpful to an extent. I think it's become more helpful for me sort of the longer I've gone on coaching. However, at the start, maybe it was even a hindrance. So obviously, as most coaches do, probably most coaches, you start with the younger age groups, especially yourselves. Obviously, you started when your kids were younger. So my first ever group I coached, I was like a volunteer coach. It's like a under sevens group, local Sunday team near me, and I gave up one evening a week and my Sundays to go and coach them. And obviously, I'd come from this world of where I was watching, I don't know whoever was good at the time, Barcelona under Guardiola and stuff like that. And then trying to imprint it on these 6-year-olds that never had seen a football in their life, let alone know how to position themselves in between the lines, etc., etc. So taking a step back and then learning how to communicate with children first of all, how to create an environment, how to put on sessions that were age appropriate. That was fantastic. But then I think certainly now in academies, if you're coaching under 13s, 14s, upwards, even to an extent under 11s and 12s as well, there are things that I know through sort of my background in analysis that some coaches may not have in terms of, just basic sort of tactical principles, or knowing how a player should receive a ball. If they can get those habits in really early, at 10, 11 years old, can they receive a ball at 10 years old that would be effective even when they're 20, 25 years old? So it definitely does help. However, my advice to people that are into analysis or like watching the analysis on Match of the Day that are just getting into coaching would be, first of all, it's a completely different thing. It's a completely different sport. What you see on the TV on a Saturday and Sunday, and what you see down at the park with the under 8s.
Yeah. When you listen to the pundits do analysis, like on Monday Night Football or something like that, would you generally agree with what they're saying, or are they more? Is it more of like a commercial arm of what they're saying to generate stories, or are they accurate?
It varies. It does vary. Cause some are a lot better than others.
Right.
Match of the Day, for example. Obviously, I'm not sure how many million people tune in every Saturday evening, but it's definitely much more for the mass market. And obviously the two pundits there, they don't actually do a lot of the analysis themselves. They have sort of like runners or analysts in the studio that would like point things out and work with them really, really closely to create the sort of 60-second soundbite after the game. I think it's pretty much a consensus amongst people that do analysis properly that the best stuff on TV is probably the Monday Night Football stuff. In the hour before the game, with Jamie Carragher and Gary Neville on the big old Sky Pad and stuff. It's good stuff, and it's really intriguing. And I think even go back to what you were saying about going to see QPR and Mark Warburton work and stuff like that. It's given the average football fan a deeper level of understanding in the game. So now if someone came into QPR and they were playing rubbish football and there seemed to be no sort of tactical plan, you'd maybe vote with your feet. So therefore, the QPR owner or Chris Ramsey or Les Van, the technical director, would then try and get in a manager that would look at the game in more of a modern view and sort of give the fans what they want. So it's quite interesting.
It's a double-edged sword, I think, with the fans getting more knowledge about how the football works. But what do you do now, then, Tristan? What's your current roles and what you're up to? I know you do a few things, but what's your current situation?
So during the day, Monday to Friday, I work at like a 16s to 19s football academy program in High Barnet in North London. For people that aren't familiar with that, it's basically like a normal college you'd have here in the UK, where the boys, every day are in class for an hour or two, working towards like a BTEC qualification, a level 3 BTEC qualification. And then we have the year 1s in class during the morning and then out on the pitch during the afternoon, and the year 2 sort of like this 18, 19-year-olds, vice versa. And then, we have a session more or less every day. And if not, we would have a game against basically sometimes pro clubs, but also other colleges that work in that sort of same environment. So that's what I do during the day. And then in the evening, I've got a kind of variety of coaching roles. One of the main ones is down at Aldershot Town, being a lead with the under-13s there. Something that I've done for about 18 months now, and I tremendously enjoy. A fantastic group of players, great environment to work in. So I enjoy that. And then also I do a couple of bits for another couple of private academies wherever I sort of have time, and also I do some coaching and some analysis at Chalfont St Peter, which is like a step 4 non-league side in Hertfordshire, so or Buckinghamshire.
Yeah.
So basically very, very busy.
Yeah,
I know, devote all my waking hours to football and to coaching, and sometimes it can be difficult because the lines can get blurred, because obviously it's something I tremendously enjoy, but at the same time it's your job. So, but yeah, I'm really, really fortunate and lucky to do what I do. And when I speak to my friends who are stuck in offices or studying somewhere or something like that, and I think, I'm out on a football pitch Monday to Friday, it's fantastic.
Probably a little bit better, kind of April to
100%.
Time when it's warm.
100%. Like, we're recording this now, and it's probably about 1 degree outside. So yeah, when this podcast comes out, I might no longer be a football coach. I have to find an HR or marketing podcast to go on
in the office.
Yeah.
And you're a Colchester United fan as well.
Yes,
Yeah.
a Colchester United fan. I'm not sure what you want to say about Colchester United. I don't know.
Mid-table division.
We've sort of got a bit of a claim to fame this season. We're playing Man United away in the League Cup. I'll be going in December.
Yeah.
So we're in the quarter-final of the League Cup. So that's one for Colchester's biggest fixture possibly ever.
Yeah.
Definitely right up there. So yeah, Colchester fan. But then going back to what I was saying before about sort of the average football fan's awareness of the game, it's been quite interesting to see even in League Two how football's changed.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, it's still very direct at times, but now I'm seeing a lot more managers and coaches with more of a tactical plan, playing quote unquote better football. But yeah, sort of back threes and teams mixing it up and doing different things to what they were doing before. Whereas now teams that are just play very, very direct, so maybe like Grimsby or Wickham in League One, they're sort of less of the norm. Whereas even 10 years ago, 15 years ago, that was everyone
playing the same way, weren't they?
Yeah, it is interesting. You see a lot of clips on Twitter now, don't you, from Division 2 or Division 1, some just fantastic goals, and they wouldn't look out of place in the Premier Division, some of those goals playing out from the back and things like that.
Tristan, if it's okay, we're going to a big question here to kind of kick us off really around the main theme of getting you on the show. And I don't know how easy it's to answer, but it's, from your position then, and thinking about what we do with the players we work with, when supporting like the really young players in the foundation phase, what would you say should be the key priorities for the coach? And I'm not talking just about specific practices, but kind of the overview of stuff. How should we be approaching our coaching practices, would you say, with like younger players?
Yeah, big question.
It is a big question, yeah.
Massive question. I think the most important thing in any sort of age group is the environment at any level, is creating an environment where kids have that fire in their belly to go and get better at football and play football and learn and enjoy themselves while doing it. Yeah, I think that's just vitally important. So, as you mentioned before, even if you were doing the wrong things at a certain time in terms of, in your opinion, in terms of sessions, line drills, etc., if the kids were really motivated to be there and they were really enjoying it, and the seconds, the limited time they did have on the ball, they were really trying their hardest, then it was probably more fruitful for them than some environments where they're not motivated, or not every player is maybe switched on. I don't know how to use that word with the younger players, because obviously there's a lot going on psychologically, but so the environment is the key thing. And I think if that environment to a certain extent, especially with the younger age groups, is player-led at times, and the players take accountability and ownership of their own development and their own football, I think that can be key.
Yeah, and so just a question just on the environment, and this is something we've spoken a lot about in podcasts.
It comes up all the time,
doesn't it? Come up a lot, yeah. So if you go into Aldershot, if you take on a new age group, or with the football academy college, if you go in there with a new team, how do you go about setting the right environment? What kind of things do you do to kind of create that environment where even, I guess, children or young adults doing BTECs want to have fun and they want to develop? What kind of things would you do?
I think one of the most important things is setting standards. So and people and players, but especially children, they very much learn specifically in the football sense through trial and error, but also in terms of like, he got away with doing this, so maybe that's acceptable. And a lot of 8-9-year-olds, even 12-13-year-olds, don't fully know the difference between right and wrong. So, for example, if someone's late, obviously that's less of a controllable thing if you're coaching a session at 5 p.m. where kids, parents finish work and they've got to get their kids to the session and stuff.
Yeah.
But, in our environment, if a 17-year-old can't get himself out of bed, to get in at 10 a.m, that's a problem. So, yeah, lateness, attire, but even things in terms of effort during sessions, things like that. So if you hold yourselves to a high standard and let the kids know, what's expected of them, I think that's a key important thing. And myself, I think about when I first started secondary school, and there were a few teachers. I was going home after the first or second week, and I was thinking, Mr. or Miss whatever, it's awful. I don't, they're too hard on us, etc., etc. But some of those teachers, in 3-4 months' time, turned out to be the very, very best teachers, because they set the standards so well in the first 2 weeks that no one could push boundaries at all, and then they got on with the teaching and learning, and people were inspired by them. So I think the setting standards is really, really important. In terms of the younger age groups in the foundation phase, as I mentioned, creating a culture where the players are in charge of their own development or have some role in that is brilliant. So things like allowing the players to create their own lineups before the game, or if, for example, using conditions within games as well, where obviously every player wants to win. So if you're playing like a 4v4 small-sided game and you have to beat a player before you can score, obviously if you've got leadership characters in that team of 4, they're gonna want their teammates to be able to be creative on the ball. So straight away you're setting a precedent, and saying, well, in an environment where players really want respect from their peers, if they're creative on the football and they stay on the ball and they take touches and beat players, then they're going to be rewarded by their peers. Stuff like that's brilliant. And then so if players can really have that enjoyment and love of the game through you giving them ownership of their development, and they might go home and take touches on the ball and go out in the garden and play with their friends and set up matches, at lunchtime at school and after school and stuff like that. So therefore they're coming to practice and they're coming to training probably better footballers, because you've as I used that phrase before, lit the fire in the belly, and they've come in and they're much better for that.
Makes sense, doesn't it? Do you think, Tristan, that the environment should change as the players progress through the phases and get older, or is those fundamental the whole way through? I mean, you work with older boys, so like 18, 19-year-olds. Would it be any different really in the approach compared to what we do with maybe 7, 8, 9-year-olds?
Yeah, no, I think there's some core things, like as I mentioned with the standards, and I think as a coach, if you're someone that has a lot of integrity about them, I think players at all ages can sort of see that and will respect that if they can tell that you're being yourself and you're fair with every individual, and you want the best for them. I think you'll get that in return, and that'll be reciprocated from the players. I think as you do start to move through age groups, you can be harder on players potentially in terms of, especially if you're working, maybe elite environments. I don't really like that word, but academy environments where players that are 14 and 15 in a couple of years' time also have to step into a youth team and then hopefully onto the first team, where certain things are demanded in terms of effort in practice, in terms of the high standards I talked about. So yeah, I think if you have key fundamentals and you have a lot of integrity about you as a coach, that can be key throughout all age groups. But as you get older and older, if you can just build in the sort of demands you set for the players, I think that's quite important.
The expectation thing is so true, isn't it? We're seeing it ourselves. You kind of got to set the standard quite high for the age group that you've got, but also be consistent with it. I mean, it's sticking to it. You've got to pick your battles as well a little bit, because you don't want to be fighting everything, but it's just about making sure that the players understand, what a mark session's like and what you can and can't do. And it's so true that if you set it in early, suddenly you get so much more out of your training sessions, because you're not worrying about all the nonsense now. You just focus on the coaching. You don't lose all the time to having to firefight problems that come up.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. And I think the other thing in terms you mentioned about ownership, I think that's a great point. Giving some ownership to the players in terms of in the session, can you get them running part of the session themselves? Maybe a kind of ball mastery type session, or as soon as they arrive, can they just get themselves into teams and start playing like in arrival activity? And even things like getting them to choose the teams when you play matches, like as you go through, I think you just get their interest and they're just they're more involved,
engaged
right? Engaged and involved for the whole session.
Yeah, a phrase I've used recently, and something, especially when I've gone into a new environment, I've said to players, I said it's your session, not mine.
Yeah.
So in terms of them, like you said, putting cones out and things like that, or making sure there's enough footballs in with me, if it's a practice where I'm loading footballs and serving footballs in, then you're basically putting them on your side. So you're working together. And you're collaborating towards the end goal, rather than it being sort of like a school scenario where you're the teacher, you're the bad guy, and you're telling them what to do, and sort of any rebellious nature from the kids might get respect from their peers, versus if the kids are doing things that you want in terms of being very, very coachable and wanting to sort of display those high standards that you're setting, and help pack things away, and try their hardest. If that's what's cool, then you're definitely onto a winner.
Yeah, that's so true, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
I like the idea of doing the. Sorry, Mark. Just the idea of thinking about games of practice in which it's encouraging the other players to kind of support the other players. I think that's the next. I mean, I think we do it a little bit, but almost not consciously. Even I spoke about it a couple of times, but we did it last night. We do an indoor session on a Wednesday night, and we played a headband game with the players. So it doesn't. They'll be in 2 teams of 4. But the team that gets, if you score a goal, you get headband on, and the team that gets headband, or if you've got headband all the players, they win the game. So it doesn't matter if you go and score 10 goals on your own, you need your other 3 mates to get goals as well. So what you see straight away is I'm thinking about, if I've got my goal, then I'll drop back a little bit, trying to play your teammate, trying to encourage him to get forward and stuff. So there's a bit of that in that practice, but I've never really thought about it in that sense that actually it's more than just a game to get him thinking. It's also a game to get him supporting each other as well, which is great.
100%, especially if say you're doing like a holiday camp or something, or any environment where the players are of different qualities, which is really most kind of football environments. Then instead of saying you have to pass to X, Y, Z, obviously just putting a condition in, and you're being sort of less blatant about it, but they're straight away they're passing to people that aren't as good on the ball. So it's a brilliant example.
They do it without knowing, right? That's the
Yeah. And you see the leaders come through, don't you, as well?
Yeah, definitely.
Also, the technical players who know where to position themselves, how to move their body to make the pass to the player. You see so much. A condition like that does show you where the players are as well, ability-wise.
Yeah. I love that game. Actually, you mentioned beat your teammate before you can score. I've always done it. I've always done the opposite way around. You have to beat a teammate in your own half. You can't pass in your own half till you get over the halfway line. I've never thought about beating your teammate before you can score. It's a good one. Yeah.
So Tristan, moving on a little bit then, would you set a curriculum for an age group, the age groups we coach, like at under 8s, 9s, 10s, if you were in our shoes and taking on a bunch of players for a season or so in the grassroots space, do you think a curriculum is a good idea to have a plan for a season, or do you think you don't need that and it's more about just kind of seeing what the players do on a week-to-week basis?
Yeah, it's difficult. I think being proactive as coach is definitely better than being reactive. So, for example, we conceded 2 goals at the weekend through balls that came out wide. I'm going to do 90 minutes on Monday on defending crosses. I think if you keep on doing that, then you will miss out on some core fundamental aspects of a player's development. But however, as you mentioned, on the other end, if you're too rigid with it, and if you're forcing sessions on kids at a certain time that aren't appropriate, then that's also not the best way to go. So for example, obviously, like we mentioned, it's quite cold out at the moment. So if you open up your big book, and then this evening you're doing 1v1 practices, and there might be some players that are resting at times, which is also fine. I think certain practices where it's not really a line drill, but there are rest periods for players is fine. It doesn't have to be games all the time. But then obviously you'd manage that in this sort of weather, how long a player would be out for and off for. Or if you're doing a ball mastery thing, do players really want to be doing toe taps on the ball, standing in the same space when it's blowing a blizzard? So definitely have key fundamental topics throughout the season, but then maybe a week before or a couple of days before, or even sort of the morning of the session, I'd say plan the session on that day, depending on who's coming, because you might have low numbers, what individuals are coming. So you might have seen something on this game on the Sunday, the way you want to challenge a player. For example, a player is not striking the ball very well when they're passing the ball, so you might put on a practice on the Wednesday to help them and to challenge them with their passing of the ball. So yeah, sort of in between. I don't want to sit on the fence about things, but if you go too far either way, and it's the same with a lot of things in life, then then it's not the right thing to do.
And do you, when you're training at Aldershot with the under-13s, do you have a syllabus that you follow there?
Yeah, so there is a scheme of work. It runs through blocks, basically 6 weeks blocks, which runs with like the school half terms, and each block has an in possession and out of possession topic. And it's quite interesting where the time is split evenly between in and out of possession. Yeah. So the coaches, you can either do 3 weeks of the in topic and 3 weeks of the out topic, but these topics, they're not like mega specific in terms of one topic isn't like rotation in the midfield. That's not a 3 week topic. The topics are more like playing from the back, playing through the thirds, finishing and creating and finishing. Yep. So within a playing through the thirds topic, you can obviously do a multitude of different things. Yeah.
But so you've got a framework to work to, but what you put around that, the meat you put on it is really 100%, up to you.
And there's no like specific sessions that you have to run or anything like that. But yeah, going back to what I was saying about the defence and attack being balanced, I think it's quite interesting because a lot of, I'm really interested in this kind of stuff like syllabuses and curriculums and stuff. Maybe you'd have 4 different things. Where I worked in America, you would be geared around your 4 bits of the style of play, and one was like something like creative play, playing out from the back, and then there was one defending one, which was like intelligent defending or pressing or something like that, and that's 1 out of 4. But it's interesting where you find the balance between defending and attacking. And I think I speak for most coaches who prefer, especially in the foundation phase, to do attacking sort of things, dribbling, creating, scoring, passing. However, I did loads of 1v1 and 2v2 defending last season with the under 12s at the time, and I think their attacking got better because of that. Yeah. Because at the start of the season, we were doing a 2v2 practice, and it was very easy for the attacking team because the body shape wasn't great from the defensive players. The moments of when to press or when to drop or how to pressure and cover weren't very good. So therefore, the attacking players weren't being stretched as much. Yeah. So I think it's so important that you, instead of just waking up on the day of the session and thinking, I really fancy doing a finishing session today, that you do work to a framework that does include defending and 1v1 and all aspects of the game, even though you might not think it's important.
Yeah. So I think making sure I understand what you're saying. So you're basically suggesting that by doing more defensive work as well, you're making the attackers better because you're stressing the attackers in practice. Obviously, the defenders are getting better, and then that's making the attackers have to think about how they interact and how they play. Yeah,
like if Salah and Mane trained against us 3 every week for Liverpool, they'd probably, I don't know, maybe not, maybe I'm wrong, they might not get as much out of it training against Van Dijk.
It'd be 3 against 2 though, right? We'd overload.
Yeah, exactly. We'll out-tax them.
What I've always found funny about defence and attacking practices, like it seems quite easy when you coach attacking practices with the kids. Like it just seems easier. The minute you try and coach something defensive, it just seems a lot harder, doesn't it? You could do the same practice but just focus the coaching points in the other area, but it always seems to be a bit more challenging to keep the players' engagement and stuff like that. But I totally agree it's important, and actually you're dead right that the better you can improve the opposite side of what you're trying to do, that you're going to get the counter side getting better as well, right? But I always find it doesn't ever kind of work as well doing the defensive stuff as does the attacking stuff.
Well, I think the other interesting thing is a lot of, like, when I've been to see academies, a lot of the stuff has been attacking practices for sure. And I'm sure there was a podcast with Chris Ramsey, and he was talking about that his focus or his team's focus has always been attacking in the kind of foundation, the young ages. He doesn't really worry so much about defending. He always wants them to be on the ball and attacking. That's his main focus. So I do think it's an interesting one because, and I guess it comes back to some of the Pete Sturgis type viewpoints as well about wanting the players to be on the ball all the time in tight situations, having to manoeuvre it and not kind of give the ball away. So it is. I think it is interesting. I know from my standpoint, I generally I do defensive practices, but I do a lot of attacking ones as well. Probably do more attacking than defending.
I guess if they're good at attacking practices, especially like 1v1 stuff like that, and there's a desire to get on the ball if you haven't got the ball, that improves your ability to defend as well, doesn't it? Yeah, if you really want it to go and attack, then maybe it's kind of just intrinsically built into some of the sessions without it being a focus as such. Yeah. So on that point then, Tristan, what about passing? there is a big emphasis, and I think we totally agree that the priority should be, especially in the foundation phase, for the players to get on the ball, be good on the ball, manipulate the ball really well. Should passing be part of their development in the younger phases, would you say? Or is it something you don't worry about till later on? Or
something quite interesting on that. So one of my friends and colleagues as well have set up a club in Portland in America, and one of the phrases he uses, he doesn't use pass really at all throughout the club, certainly not with the younger age groups. He uses lend the ball. It's quite an interesting one. So players are seen to lend the ball rather than pass it, because obviously everything for him and how it should be is around the individual and their individual development and individual creativity. So I think lending the ball. The other one is combining as well. I like that word.
Because both these imply that you're not giving it up, are you? You're still involved, rather than I've just passed it on to you now. I'm out of the game. I'm still involved.
Yeah, the notion of like you have to share the ball when it's the right thing to do to share the ball, I think is wrong. 100%. You know, some of the best players in the world, the most creative players in the world. You know, Messi, Neymar, Salah, Mane, the guys that can do frightening things on the ball. And there's no way that they'd be as good as they were if they were being told to play off 2 touches and pass the ball every second. But even some of the best passers in the world, players like Busquets, they still have a fantastic understanding of ball mastery and how to evade pressure with movement and turns and drop of the shoulders and things like that. Yeah, no, I agree during the foundation phase that staying on the ball is definitely the priority. However, I think the right decision should be encouraged. So, for example, if you've got a 2v1 scenario, I wouldn't be screaming pass the ball, pass the ball, pass the ball. However, if the player tried to take a player on when it wasn't really on, I might be saying to them afterwards, what did you see? You know, pose them a question. Did you see X? Did you see that person in space? What might you do next time? Yeah. However, I definitely wouldn't ever have a go at a player or make players think that taking player on is a negative thing.
Yeah. I think that's a great point around the 2v1, and for the under 8s they play 5-a-side, as you know. You get so many times where there's 2v1s attacking 2v1s, and it is difficult. It's a difficult situation. Sometimes you think that you can just lay him in, just pass the ball. He's in, right, and he's going to score.
The adult football,
But then the other time the boy or girl has a go to try and go around the defender and may get tackled, or may go around him and score. It is a difficult one. You don't want to not encourage them to have a go and take him on. But then you want to make them think as well. What other options did I have at the time? What could I have done?
And how many times do you see the coach on the side when the player does the decision to beat the player and it comes off? They're like, "Oh, well done, that was superb." And when they do the same decision, but it doesn't come off, then they're being criticised for not passing the ball. It's like, you know what, you can't have it both ways, can you?
No. Just to move on slightly, just a question, match days. So you take the under-13s for matches as well, so that would be 9-a-side, is it? No, 11-a-side.
11-a-side, first season of 11-a-side,
so move to 11-a-side, okay. And obviously do you play competitive leagues at that for all the shot, or is it still friendly matches?
So we play in, I don't know, it's what's called the JPL. I'm not sure if you've heard of it. It's marketed to be like a bridge between academy football and grassroots football that play on Saturdays.
Okay.
Which is all right. Some of the quality of the teams is quite good. Some's okay. Yeah. Some of the coaching is more of like the traditional grassroots kind of stuff.
What, kick it out? And things like that?
Yes, sort of stuff.
Is it
like
more
that.
win focused?
Or coaches that say they try and play good football when they sort of don't, or they do when it's on. When it's on. When it's doable. Phrase. Yeah, we'll play out when it's on. So we're playing that, which is brilliant. I think a good games program is the key. Yeah. I think especially if you're in an environment where you've got training more than once a week, if you can replace a training every now and again with a match, with a friendly, bring players in, as long as you don't have, in your example, 5 players playing and 7 players off just doing nothing. Yeah. If you can manage that well, it's so important. Yeah. One of my main sort of people I look to in terms of youth development is Dan Machichi. And he said at MK Dons, the key thing for them was the games environment. Dele Alli would turn up to training when he was in the youth academy at MK Dons, and then there'd be a grassroots team 2 years up in there ready to play against MK Dons, or there'd be Arsenal Academy in there to play in. So that variety of games, is absolutely vital, because at the end of the day, you play football to play matches, and the reason why you develop players and you want them to play better is because one day, hopefully, they're playing in a first team environment. The games program is definitely one of the key pillars of developing players.
And what's your kind of approach for match day then? Because obviously it is you at the age group now where it's defined as competitive. Do you go along there as wanting to? I'm sure you want to win the games, but what's your kind of focus? Is it still really on developing under 13? Do you want them? You're still trying to get better, so you're trying different things, or what's your kind of approach for those games?
I think the development word sort of should never leave the conversation. Yeah. Even at first team level, although first team is about results, but certainly from under 23s downwards, that's not the end goal. You even hear coaches that have won the FA Youth Cup, for example, and they say, obviously the FA Youth Cup's brilliant, but if I ask you who won the FA Youth Cup in 1993, you probably won't be able to tell me. Yeah. Whereas if you said who went from that team that won the FA Youth Cup into playing the Premier League, you'd probably know those names. So development should always be the key fundamental. Obviously, at under 18, you're not going to tell players to, just dribble the ball until they lose it, because staying on the ball and having fun is the most important thing. Yeah. You'd still develop them to give them the needs that they'd have to play in a first team environment, positional sense. Yeah. Things like winning headers if you're a centre back, very, very specific positional things. Yeah. But at under 13, definitely development, individual development in particular, over team and unit development is the most important thing.
And do you rotate the players still at that age, or have they generally got fixed positions, equal game time? How does it kind of work?
Yes, the players do rotate positions, which it gives me and the coach I work with as well a big challenge, because we have to give a lot of individual feedback, obviously. So if you're asking a player who's a forward who likes to play up front to work on his runs or his finishing 1v1 or something like that, but then he's having to play left back because we're playing 11v11 as well, and in 7v7 or 9v9 a left fullback sort of position might get in on goal, whereas in 11v11 it would happen a lot more rarely. Exactly. We look to rotate the players, definitely, sort of because we want to, but also out of necessity as well. At the moment in our age group, we happen to have not that many players that would really, really want to be centre-backs all the time. Yeah. So therefore, some players that were in the midfield or were out wide would have to go in centre-back, and then therefore that has a knock-on effect with other players having to rotate because they've rotated. But certainly I do that anyway. It's so important that players experience different positions on the pitch, experience what's needed to play different roles. So for example, if you're centre-back, it's really important to play in midfield, so you can understand what sort of angles you have to pick up if you're a centre-back looking to play out. But even if you look at like the Premier League, like James Milner, for example, he plays a bit of left back. Yep. He was a centre midfield. He was a wide player before that. So having been able to have those tools to do whatever you need to do, is vitally important. I was lucky enough to go to Ajax, go to Amsterdam, to watch their under-19s play and their first team play, and also some of the younger age groups play, their under-8s play as well. And something that was evident even in the under-19s, certainly under-8s and sort of less so, but definitely still evident in the first team, was that players could rotate and play everywhere. Obviously, that's quite an isolated example of Ajax, and they're always going to have the best players, so it looks easy. They're playing Sparta Rotterdam, so they could sort of do whatever they wanted and still probably win the game. They're under 19s, but every player was like a number 10 basically. They were dropping in, and the striker was dropping between the centre backs, and the left full back was going to play on the right for a bit. It was incredible to watch. So that's certainly something I'd encourage.
Yeah. That's been their philosophy for a long time, isn't it, Ajax, to be fair? So on that kind of subject then, being grassroots coaches, we have the obligation of trying to develop the players we've got, but also to work as a team. I think that's where a bit different to maybe what the academies have to do, because they're not so team focused, and rightly so, they're about trying to get players through to hopefully first teams. What would you say would be, should we be focusing 50-50 on the player and the team, or should it be still more player centred, would you say? Or, how would you manage if you were us with regards to, we go out to our games on a Sunday and we aren't desperate. We want the boys to want to win the game, and we won't compromise really development too much. But how much time should we be spending kind of building a team as opposed to developing the players?
It's difficult because in terms of building a team, I'm not sure what experience you've had, but a lot of players might leave from season to season and go to elsewhere, or drop out of football entirely, or move up, go into a different environment, an academy environment potentially. So yeah, your hands are tied if you're trying to build a team at under 10. You know, how many of those guys are still going to be playing together at under 18? Probably not many. However, I do think back to my experience playing grassroots football, and I think some of my best memories were actually from winning games and coming back and having a cup run and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So it is quite interesting finding the balance. I think just creating an environment, like I said before, where the players enjoy themselves, and the players know what they need to do to get better, but it's not like they're at school. So obviously they're at school, 6-7 hours a day. They don't want to come to training and then hear you speak to them for 20 minutes on how they should be opening up to receive the ball and how they should be driving through midfield with the ball, and how you want them to, start drifting out wide when the ball goes into the centre back and stuff like that. You should definitely give them one or two things that they can improve on, and one or two things they need to strive. They need to strive to be. However, I think definitely looking at the player themselves and asking them what they want to achieve from football and how you'd help them achieve that. I think that's the most important thing. And I think going back to giving players the ownership of what they want to do, that's something that I've definitely done at Aldershot when I've had our player reviews that we have 2 or 3 times a season. I've started with asking the player and saying, especially in the sort of phase where I was getting to know them, what do you want to do? What do you want to achieve in the game? And at that level, all of them said they wanted to play professional football in some sort of capacity. So therefore, I said, well, if you want to play for Chelsea, do you think Tammy Abraham has moments during sessions where he's messing around, or where he's not entirely focused, or how many hours do you think he did outside of training working on his finishing? Yeah. So then you can bring it back to the player and say, well, hang on, if you told me you want to be this, what are you doing to achieve that, or how can I help you to turn into that player? Whereas if a player turned around to you at grassroots and say that, I just want to have fun and kick around with their mates, and then you did what I said before in terms of trying to turn them into the next Cristiano Ronaldo, then that's probably not what they want. Yeah.
I reckon Tony Max around in training those points. I reckon it's lethal. Yeah, fair point. Excellent. What would a session look like for you? Like if you had a 90-minute session with your players, how would you break that down? What would it look like, generally speaking? I've totally recognise all groups are a bit different, but would you have a similar structure to what you do, or does it completely depend on what's in front of you?
I think it varies, and I think it's good that it varies as well. I think players do like structure. However, for example, on Monday we had a session at Aldershot where we just sort of played games, and it was conditioned games for 90 minutes. Where for an average session, what I was doing particularly last season, and I've carried on to this season, would be do a bit of start with a game. It's like an intro activity. Yeah. So as the players arrive, they can get into their 1v2, and then someone else turns up and it's 2v2, then a few others turn up and it's 5v3 and stuff like that. So start intro activity, a game, and that's a good social as well for the boys, so they can talk to each other about how their day was, and sort of set the tempo of the session, and that also replaces a kind of dynamic warm-up as well. So the players are still moving around, and they're not just sort of hitting free kicks into the corner of the goal as they arrive at the session. I'd always set up for them to be able to play a game. Then I'd do either a bit of ball mastery, unopposed ball mastery. I always sort of go back and forth on what I think about unopposed ball mastery, and if I think whether it's worthwhile and whether the players enjoy it and whether it actually translates to a game. However, I do certainly think that unopposed practice is something that is important. That there's no way you can get to a certain level playing the game without spending those hours by yourself with the football, learning different moves and techniques and things like that. So, and then I'd go into what you sort of be like the main chunk of the session, so the practice based off whatever the topic is. Last season, I would normally split the group. Say I had 15 players or 14 players at training, I'd initially split them into 2. If I was, say, doing a possession-based practice or a pressing practice or a 1v1 or a 2v2, I'd make sure that the football to player ratio was a bit better than 1 to 16. kind of thing. I see a lot of practices, so sort of a lot of stuff that FA are trying to push as well, where you've got under 12s in and you go straight into having one football between 16 players. And I think although it's brilliant to maybe develop certain things in terms of understanding of the game and building certain topics, a player's only going to get better on the ball if they have touches on the ball.
Yeah.
So, certainly trying to maybe do something in a smaller space with a 2v2 and a 3, and then building it up into one football between 14 and a bigger space. I think, I think that's valuable. And then normally ending with a match as well. Something that I did during pre-season was actually, because it's mandatory at Aldershot to do between 10 to 15 minutes of some sort of ball mastery or ball manipulation practice at the start of the session. So something I was doing during pre-season in the summer was doing that for the last 10 minutes of the session. And I drew comparisons with like the NBA, where the players practice their free throws after the session. So obviously, so can you make that free throw when there's 3 seconds left on the clock and the pressure's on and you've played a whole game and your arms are fatigued, building that into football. So refining your technique when you're tired is quite an interesting thing to do. So it's just varying practices, giving players different experience of doing different things, and the main thing as well in the environment that I'm in now, working with players every single day, is before, for example, unopposed passing practices I wasn't a fan of, and I still wouldn't be. For example, if I had an hour a week with a grassroots team, they wouldn't feature at all. However, if you've got players training for 9 hours a week or 6 hours a week, some variation is really, really important. Especially if you're looking at their loads, if they played a game the day before, if they've got a game the day after, you don't want to hammer them playing 11 for 2 hours. So, varying your practices, and that also makes you better as a coach. So how can you run an unopposed practice that still has game relevance, that still challenges the players, that players are still enjoying and interested in? So that's something that I started to do as well.
I think it's a really good. I think some really good points in there. I think structure for me is a big thing. Like when I was coaching the under 10s last year, always had a certain structure of similar to you. They had games when they arrival activity. Then we went into ball mastery, so they could have understood that. It would be unopposed to start with, and then we would have a opposed element coming in somehow. Then we would go into the chunk of the session. I think I just like, I don't know, I like structure, maybe because I like structure in my life. I find that the players just knew what was coming. It did vary. Different games, but the structure, they knew what the flow was. And also before games, I was very structured in terms of, right, we turn up, we would do X and Y, maybe do some ball mastery to start it, just to get moving the ball. Then we would go in to do probably an attacking overload with multiple goals on the side of the pitch, just so they knew that what was coming before the game as well. They had that structure.
But they still probably ask you when we're playing a game.
That's true. So, last question from me, Tristan, if that's okay. Back to being an analyst, really. Okay. So football's evolved, I reckon, quite a lot, especially over the last 5 or 10 years, probably more so than maybe previous 15 or 20 years, with the way the game's played and the way different positions and maybe the way teams set up in games and change the way they play in games. I wondered what your thoughts were about how the game might evolve in the next 5 to 10 years, and again, how that might impact on us and coaching younger age groups and preparing them for maybe what might be the future of football.
So as I mentioned before, with Colchester in League Two, and then obviously playing a back three at times and looking to play out at times, depending on, definitely not playing out at all costs, but depending on the opposition and things like that. I think the game's only going to go more in that way. So people and coaches are always influenced by what's popular at the time. So obviously in the late 80s and 90s, where Charles Hughes and the long ball style of play, and Graham Taylor, he was the England manager, coaches would then look at that and then try and implement that on teams, whereas the sort of younger generation of coaches now and players as well are watching Man City having great success, and Liverpool and Barcelona prior to that, and then people are going to try and imprint that sort of style. Trying to make, like I said, under 10s play at Barcelona will never happen, and that is the wrong thing to do, because that's a first team environment. However, there will be probably more possession based teams, and more teams that try and press high, and more teams where players are taking up certain roles like inverted fullbacks, for example, that didn't even exist 15, 20 years ago. So I think in terms of developing a player for the future game, the player in the future game is a player that is creative on the ball, can make the fans that pay to get in want to come back, that can adapt to different systems and different styles, because not everyone's playing 4-4-2 now. So, can they play right back in a back three, or can they play part of a double pivot in midfield, or can they play as that lone midfield player, or also can they play with multiple positions and rotate? So, yeah, I think if you educate players based on sort of the tactical demands of the game currently, rather than 10, 15 years ago, then I think they'll be more able to adapt to the game of the future.
Yeah. And how important is decision making then, do you think? Because it sounds like all these things, obviously you want the technical ability and physical ability to be able to be adaptable and do different things, but a lot of it sounds like it's decision making as well, right? Because what you got to do when you're playing right back compared to maybe a pivot or right winger or centre back, it's different decisions, and having a mindset and an approach in which you're happy to be challenged and do things, that's got to be quite important, right? I would say.
Decision making is absolutely key, and it's obviously one of the main reasons why in the foundation phase in particular you don't want to commentate and put decisions in the player's head, and have a lot of game-based practices where the players are free to come up with their own decisions and be creative and explore and work out what works well and what doesn't. So having players that are really good decision makers, I think, is vitally important, and that can stem through all age groups.
Tristan, thank you so much.
Cheers.
Really enlightful. We're very grateful for your time and stuff. And I'm sure coaches will get a lot out of this. And what we'll try and be doing is thinking about what the age groups we've currently got and how we can put some of this stuff into play now to get them ready for when they're, 14, 18, 23s, whatever it might be. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to be on.
Cheers, Tristan. Thanks,
Thank
mate.
you.
So that was Tristan. Good interview.
Yeah, brilliant. Very, very good.
Some very good questions asked. Now, what a top guy.
Yeah, he spoke so well, right? It was firstly a pleasure to meet him, and I've heard him on the Gary Carneen show previously, and he come across excellently there, and the way he spoke about coaching and the foundation phase. That's, I think, one of the other reasons we kind of asked him to come and talk to us. He just come across really well. As we've been lucky with all the guests we've had on, really, they've just.
It's funny, isn't it? Because you don't kind of know what to expect, but everyone kind of comes very articulate, very knowledgeable, knows football, lives and breathes it and loves it, but also comes with it at a slightly different angle and a slightly different perspective. But there's lots of common themes that kind of keep running through most of the guests we've had on with regards to approach to football and philosophy and the way in which they feel that you can get the best out of players to help them develop.
Yeah,
and I think there were some common threads here again with the things that Tristan said.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, and I just think, firstly on Tristan's experience, right? He's an academy coach at Aldershot. He's a first team coach and analyst for, I think, Chalfont St Peter. He's done some coaching in the US that he spoke about. So he's got I think he's been an opposition scout in the past as well.
Yeah.
So he's just got, there's so much.
And he's still about half our age.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it's just a lot of different experiences there.
Yeah.
So it was.
I was fascinated by the fact that he comes in, like, he started off like analysing games at a young age and saw it from that perspective first.
Yeah.
And put the time and effort into writing about that and learning about that. I think that's fascinating,
Yeah.
and it must give you a different view on stuff as you add on the coaching and you look at it from a more of a practitioner's perspective. If you've started off on that kind of analytic foundation, then you can't walk away from that, can you? And
No.
I think that must be quite a good advantage in many ways.
Yeah.
To see the game, because you're always thinking about what the game looks like in practice.
Yeah.
So it must help you kind of plan your sessions a bit different and make sure you're focused on the stuff that's going to have probably the most transference.
Yeah, definitely. And I wonder, I didn't ask the question actually, but I wonder whether that background benefits you more coaching the foundation phase, or as you get into the youth development phase, as it gets a bit more tactical at kind of 7-a-side and then to 9-a-side, then to 11-a-side, or whether you really get the benefit when you're maybe doing 5-a-side at under 7s, under 8s.
I reckon you might not necessarily see it so much, but then surely the more you can get that trajectory right and those kind of principles in place early, they might not show straight away maybe, or they might do, but I guess it's that stepping stone kind of, isn't it? Like that foundation, like laying the bits. And if you can get it right there, maybe at the 6, 7, 8, 9 age group, however young that may be, then surely, you know, if you get it right there, then you've got a better chance at 12, 13, 14, and then a better chance then at, you know, as the players get older and older. So, well, I wondered, Mark, maybe we should do just briefly, really, because it was a long interview anyway, just 2 or 3 highlights.
Yes.
Each of us should do. Should we spin one on one? Go on. What would you say was one of the things?
Which isn't easy, to be honest, because I've got a lot
There's
of highlights.
loads.
I've got so many notes here. Just going back over them.
You had to pick a couple of ones that you thought were stand out for you.
So I think, firstly, and we talk about it all the time, environment. We had a good discussion around the environment, and as I said, we spoke about it before, and we're big believers on making sure that environment's right in training on match day, that really allows for development, for ownership, and those items. And we had a good discussion around it and making sure it's fun. And again, to me, it perhaps wasn't anything new for us, or certainly that bit wasn't anything new for us, and hopefully a lot of the people that listen in are kind of on board with the importance of creating that right environment. But it kind of made me feel good that
it's
he was
reassuring,
highlighting
wasn't it?
It's reassuring, right?
It's good enough for Tristan. It's good enough for us, right?
Yeah, 100%. So for me, that was really, really good to hear about the environment.
Yeah, and he mentioned about standards, didn't he, and lots of player ownership and stuff, and these things. And
Definitely.
Okay, they're just words, but in practice, they're not always easy to put in place and be consistent and kind of make work. You know, it's not easy to do this stuff. It's easy to say it, but it's not always easy to put it into practice.
Yeah.
But it keeps coming up, so it's certainly worth focusing on and trying and sticking with it.
Yeah.
We've seen it ourselves, haven't we? The sessions work much better when you have kind of those real embedded principles that the players understand, and they're clear and they're concise and consistent, and suddenly you can work on the coaching a bit more. I actually listened to a podcast in the week, and there was a really good quote. I can't remember it exactly, but it was along the lines of coaching should be really simple, but you have to get everything else in place first, and then you can just kind of focus on the real simple kind of coaching points. And they were talking about Eddie Jones, the England manager, saying like apparently that's what he's really good at. But they were talking about that and saying actually, because he creates a real great environment for the players, that everything kind of works. He can then have that kind of finer detail and just those moments where he's doing the proper coaching, if you like, in inverted commas, because everything else is already done. And I think sometimes we've seen it ourselves, that if you don't get the kind of the other stuff in place, then you can't even get the coaching through, or the coaching becomes a lot more shouty or intense or reactive, you know, and stuff, because the other stuff's not there first.
And I think it's a little bit of hard work, isn't it, from a coach standpoint, at the beginning of when you maybe inherit a group or you take on a group of players. It's that little bit of hard work you've got to do to start with, and then bring it into play every week, just to ensure that environment's right and conducive for learning and fun.
If you're going to run a marathon, not that I've ever done that and would ever be capable of doing one, but if you were, I would imagine that, you know what, if you go and spend some time researching the right footwear, the right diet, the right exercise regime, you put someone up front doing that stuff, then you've got more chance of having an easier or slightly more successful marathon run than just going out and trying to run 26 miles. You know, so it's like that, isn't it? Put the effort up front in the other stuff and get that right, and then the actual activity becomes a bit easier. But if you're not going to do the other stuff first, then the activities, you know, you may get through it and do the miles, but would it, you know, what cost and at what time?
That's a good one. Where did you hear that?
I don't know. Not that I'll ever be capable of running a marathon. Can barely get around the block.
So how about from you then? So that's one from me, and how about for you?
Yeah, I think the one I really liked, and it was a little seed in me just planted, it was that peer-to-peer learning one. I like to think that in the sessions I try and put on for the players, there's a lot of ownership in there. Maybe not a lot, but there's certainly some ownership in there, and it's player centered, and I'm not as much kind of trying to stamp my authority or, you know, my shadow over the players. I want it to feel like them. I've got work to do on that still. But what I really like is trying to get more player to player support in there. So creating games and practices in which the players the game makes them have to support the players. Our players tend to do that pretty well most of the time anyway, but there's a few quiet lads in there that nice boys, really good, well behaved. Do they really nudge the other player to work a bit harder, or give them some advice and guidance as much as I'd probably like them to, moving forward and developing their character around that? I don't think they do, and maybe I could create some games that have the same technical, tactical kind of and physical outcomes, but also around that kind of social, psychological side, really push the players, these young players, to support each other and challenge each other and encourage each other and stuff more. I try and expect it as part of the natural environment, but I don't know that a lot of the games actually kind of make that happen. One or two do a little bit, but I think I could do more on that, and I'm going to give some thought to that. I really am, and I'm going to try a few games out around that, and also in match day some kind of responsibility maybe around in which players can be given maybe tasks or challenges to do in games.
So this is almost like a little bit kind of leadership skills, right? That's maybe that would benefit the players outside of football as well as developing football.
Yeah, I guess it is. I guess it would be a lot of leadership stuff in there, but you've got communication. I guess you've got observation.
Yeah.
Because what I might think. I mean, you don't know what support the other player might need.
Yeah.
So you've got to be able to observe that. You've got to be able to communicate and recognise it. Empathy. I guess all these things are leadership skills, aren't they? But I don't know. I guess I don't know exactly what it would look like, but the idea of trying to create games in which the players really have to own it, but also support not just their own contribution in the moment, but also their teammates.
Yeah,
I think that would be really good. And the more you could do that, I could see that having again that intangible kind of impacts. And you can't, when you play against us, it's kind of I don't actually know why this team's so good. I can't really see it, but it's the unseen stuff that makes the team so good because they may be very good football players, but more importantly, if they're tenacious, supportive, resilient, all those kind of stuff to an even higher level, well, there's almost 2 or 3 goals in that straight away.
Yeah, absolutely. So. Yeah, totally agree.
So that was the big one for me, I think. I've got a couple of others. Go on, do you want what?
Yeah, and another one for me, I think it was just a phrase that he used, and I put it right at the top of my page actually, and I've put it in a box with quotation marks around it. That's how important I thought it was. It was just that he said, "It's your session, not mine," which is just kind of spot on, right? It's just, and I think that, but I've never actually used that phrase, and I think it's a real powerful phrase to use with the kind of young players.
Definitely,
it's excellent.
I do say to the boys sometimes when they'll say, where should you put the goals? It's your session, not mine. Like, it's your decision. You kind of make, maybe not enough, but I think it's a good message to send to the players. This is about you now. You again, ownership. You do it. You make your mind up. You decide these things. And it's funny because I reckon 2 things out of that. First of all, the players get a sense of responsibility, which helps with engagement.
Yeah.
But also, I think the players also have a sense of accountability as well. Then to kind of make it work. Yeah. So they just it's up to you. You got to decide. So you kind of almost getting them to be a bit more mature and stuff. And then age groups vary, but I think that impact is the same at 7 as it is 17. Yeah. We own a session. Okay, it's 17. You can muck around and be naughty and cause as much problems, if not more, you can when you're 7. So nothing really changes. Yeah. It's your session. The technical stuff we're doing may be more involved, more advanced, more developed. But it's still your session, and it's still your accountability and responsibility to make it kind of work.
Yeah.
I mean, not in kind of in a negative way, but as in, no, I'm here to support you, but where do you want to put him? What do you think?
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think the other thing you can take from it is that it's your session. Get the most out of this session, right? Work as hard as you can. Yep. Kind of own the session.
Make it about you.
You can go and I think I've heard you say this, and I say this to more to my oldest son than my youngest. But you can kind of go through the motions, look like you're working hard. You can run alongside the player. But if you don't put a tackle in, you're not really...
Where's the impact?
Exactly, you're not learning, you're not really impacting. Yeah, kind of it's your session, you get the most out of this.
Yeah. I think at training, you've got to be selfish, make it about you. Now, that doesn't mean you get the ball, you don't ever give it away, but get as many touches as you can on the ball, get as many decisions as you can on the ball. Don't be the one just standing on the outside, because if you are, you're giving up probably 25-30% of development opportunity to your teammates around you. And why do you want to do that for? Why don't you want to work a bit harder and try and be the one that get the most out of the session?
Yeah, totally agree.
So the other thing that I thought was really good was the lend the ball one. I have heard it before and heard it used, and I do understand it, but maybe I hadn't really prioritised it in the sense of the message it could have and the impact it could have on the players. So we do like the players to pass the ball, or I'd like players to pass the ball. I know we also like them to beat players and do things as well, but I think it's a good weapon to have. And the way you can phrase that maybe could be better in the sense of encouraging when the player does pass the ball to remember they're still involved in the play. I think I wrote down linking or something. So I'm going to think about this again a bit more, but I need to get an expression in which passing or sharing the ball is clear around the fact that what we're looking to do is still be involved in the play, especially at the younger age, where you do see some boys are very good at passing and moving in our little team, and some of the boys actually pass and stand still. The good passes, but they're not thinking where to go to after them. They're admiring their wonderful pass, and I'd be the same at that age, I'm sure, without the wonderful pass bit. But you think if they can encourage them to be linking up, so the passes are linked, and it's kind of like a pattern and a movement. I like that idea, and again, it's something for me to think about how I get that into practice.
I totally. It was again another excellent just terminology, right? Just make it easy for the young players to understand and appreciate it. I do think that this lending the ball, passing the ball, staying on the ball, and maybe we go a little bit off topic here, but I think this is one of the biggest challenges for coaches, right? How and when you encourage passing, how you encourage when to stand the ball. Obviously, the push from the FA is to just stay on the ball, stand the ball, which I totally understand, and we've spoken about it before. Yeah. But I think you do need a mix, but it's how you get that mix. And sometimes I find myself, like when we are on the touchline during a match, and there's a 2-on-1, it's a five-a-side game, you have lots of 2-on-1 attacking 2-on-1s, right? Yeah. And you think, go on, just lay him in, just pass it, and he's in on goal. But then you think, actually, have a go at him. Have a go at him. One-on-one, be brave. Do you know what I mean? And then they may have had a go at him, and the guy's tackled him.
Maybe it's okay to do both. I mean, look, we spoke about it in the episode, but I think maybe it's okay to do both. Sometimes you take him on, sometimes you pass the ball, and have the ability to do both. Probably with the priority being trying to win if you think you can and you're confident. Yeah. But you say about the five-a-side format, and you're right. But if you're playing in the five-a-side game, you may have just had to do like a 25-yard recovery run to your teammate, get the ball, run up, lost it, got it back, and then you're attacking on a 2v1, and actually you might think, I really haven't got the legs to go around this player right now and get my shot away, so I'm going to roll him with my teammate. And at other moments when I've just got it here in the danger zone, I've just won it back, or it's come to me and I'm here and fresh, and I've got energy in my belly and I'm ready to go because I'm 7 and I've not just run for the last 2 minutes up and down. And I now I can beat the player and get the shot away. So I think it's important that the players themselves make those decisions in the moments based on all the elements that are relevant at that time, right? Play what's in front of you at the right time and make the decisions. And it's not like saying, actually, in a 2v1 you should pass to the player who's free, or you should always take the player on. You decide based on how what you think of the opponent you're playing against, how your legs feel in that moment in time, those kind of things. I think our job as coaches is to give the players hopefully the ability to be able to do either. Both technically and physically, but also the decision making, about, think about in the moment, which is hard, isn't it? But in all those things that go in your head in that split second, how am I feeling, what can I do? And I think if you look at the players that succeed at the highest possible level, they're not necessarily always the best technical players. I mean, I think a great example is Beckham, and I don't think I've ever seen him beat a player by dribbling around a player or doing a particular skill, but he certainly thinks 2 seconds ahead of most players, doesn't he? And again, if you look at like the Iniesta and stuff like that, they're just always thinking ahead. They just know the game, and I think that as coaches, we can encourage the players to be thinking ahead, but also in relation to their own energy levels, where they are on the pitch, the right time to play a ball backwards, the right time to hold on to the ball, the right time to play a ball forward, the right time to run with the ball, and there's so many variables that will make that decision the right or the wrong decision that you just need to be able to experience enough opportunities in real game time to hopefully make that second nature. It
definitely makes sense, and I think you need to then ask the question of the player, right? If it's a 2-on-1 and they made the decision to go around the player and try and get a shot rather than playing in their teammate, which is fine. I think firstly you wouldn't criticise that. If it was the third time then doing it, you might challenge it a bit more strongly. But I think you would certainly ask the question after, what else could you have done? So then so you know as a coach that person has seen the option of making that pass, but they decided to dribble. And if they say, I saw, I could have passed it to Steve. Do they have kids called Steve? I think we spoke about this before. I don't think they do anymore.
They've gone as well. They've gone as well.
I could have passed to Steve, but at least you know that pass that they realise that pass. Yes, exactly. They know that pass was on, right? So you, as a coach, you've asked that question. You realise that they've weighed up the options and they've decided, I'm going to dribble in it.
You're dead right. I guess you could ask, what were you thinking? In a positive way. What were you thinking? But what were you thinking? What did you see? What was on? But the other thing is, you could ask, why did that work? Or why didn't that work then? Why do you think that didn't work then? Because actually, you know what? Maybe they didn't beat the player because they just were tired, or maybe they just stumbled a little bit, or oh, so next time that might be different. Mightn't
Yeah,
it?
yeah.
Well, so if you're
That's
not
a
tired,
fair, very fair point.
or why did it work? Let's not,
Yeah.
because actually what you see quite a lot of the younger ones is they have a success at one thing, so what they do the next 10 times, the same thing, but it doesn't work for them. You're like, well, why did it work the first time? Well, the first time actually the ball sat quite nicely, I had the energy, I was in the right position,
Yeah.
and then the second time I tried to do it, I was a bit more tired, I was a bit further away, I wasn't in the right body shape for it, but okay, so you've learned this, so you know why it did work and why it didn't work, and not just say, okay, because it worked, well done, you're fantastic, there's a magic moment there, you're amazing. Actually, it worked for you that time. Why did it work? Well, because other things might have just come together at the right time for you, that's football. That's absolutely fine, but that might not always be the case.
Yeah.
So then recognising, okay, it's a bit different this moment now. It's just it's margins, but it's a bit different. So I might need a different solution to this problem.
Yeah.
I might need to take 2 touches now to get my shot away, or I might need to play a 1-2 pass before I can get the chance.
Yeah. So
And
you're ensuring they understand the kind of dynamics around it, not just that they've got these other options they could have done, but why did they do what they done?
I've never done this. Don't get me wrong, but like I think I'll often, when something doesn't go right, hopefully most of the time quite constructively, I would say, okay, what else could you have done? Or I've never said why didn't it work, but I kind of
it's difficult in a match though, right? In a match situation, unless you're a coach that can bring a player off and have a quick chat with them for 30 seconds and then put them back on, which I know we've done that in the past, but it's not easy to do.
It's worth doing it.
It's not easy to do, right?
Or you have to note it and have a chat about it and look for, and look for it in training.
I think you lose that if you make a note of it and then you speak to them at half time after the game. You lose that moment. It's not the same.
Then I guess you make a note of it and you recognise the fact that it has some success or failure at a certain thing, and then the next time that happens to be part of a training session or comes up in training, then you just try and say, okay, I saw you did that last Sunday, and that you went and that went top. That was the top bins finished on Sunday. Yeah. You tried again. What was different? Do you think?
Yeah.
Don't just accept the successes are going to always be successes, and don't always go too heavy on the things that don't work out. Try and help the players understand why they were a success at that moment in time, and maybe why they wouldn't always be a success. If little Jimmy's had a shot on his left foot, his right foot had a shot on his left foot, and he's completely missed it and has gone wide. Okay, it didn't work. Why didn't it work? Well, maybe I rushed my shoulder, but okay. But I guarantee what happens next time little Jimmy is he doesn't take a shot on left foot. He tries to play back on his right foot, and then the tackle comes in, or it doesn't happen, or maybe it does. But we don't want him to not take shots with his left foot.
Yeah,
didn't happen that time. Fine. Why didn't it happen? Oh, okay, good. You recognise that. No, well, maybe next time you can pick your moment and do the same thing and go again. Yeah. And I'm saying this now, but I don't do this. Yeah. But I think it would be better to recognise those moments of success and failure in inverted commas. And just players question why it worked and why it didn't work. And I think we probably do a lot more on why it didn't work than why it did work. And I see that quite a lot when one player gets one bit of success, they do the same thing, didn't they? 10 times. Some players, they did the same. Like they might have a long shot and it's gone in, and they'll try the next 10 times, all long shots. You go, pick your moments.
Definitely the long shots.
Yeah,
Like that.
But again, it's all part of the learning, isn't it?
Yeah, indeed, yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you to Tristan.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Really good.
And hopefully in maybe sometime in the future we'll be able to get him back on to maybe go into some in more detail on some of these points as well. I think it'd be great.
We can dive a bit deeper into some of the stuff. So definitely. Okay, well, thanks everyone for listening. As always, any thoughts, please do share. You can get us at SoccerCoachCast on Twitter. You can get us through email at info@thesoccercoachingpodcast.com. You can leave us reviews on whatever podcast host you're listening to. Mark loves a bit of abuse, so anything less than 5 stars, just tailor towards Mark. Anything that's 5 stars, please mention my name.
Constructive feedback.
What could you have done better?
Yeah. What else could you have done?
Yeah. Brilliant. All right, thanks everyone. Have a good week. Have a good week, Mark.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.